Divorced people of Reddit, what was the final straw? My wife put on £170 over 10 years. I never said anything and supported her attempts at weight loss. One day I was trying on an old Steelers jersey that didn't fit, because I had gained 15 pounds in 10 years. I said, well, I guess it's time to buy a bigger jersey. Her response: we're not blowing money on a stupid jersey. You'll just have to lose weight. Fucking done. £170? Sweet Jabba the Hutt. I've mentioned it before. She found out I was going blind after 3 years of marriage, and that sorta broke what was left of a failing relationship. She was gone 3 months later. I had to stop driving and move to where I walk to work to stay employed. I moved into an empty apartment with a sleeping bag. I look back at the time and am pretty amazed I didn't lose my shit worse than I actually did. Greater than I look back at that time. I feel bad for laughing. Probably when I returned home and found all the furniture, food and my wife missing. Another hint was the empty bank account. She literally took the last straw. She wasn't religious when we met. 10 years later she told me I was going to hell for believing in dinosaurs. Joke's on her, you doomed her to hell by forcing her to divorce so you won't be alone. My husband was cheating. I found out, and instead of immediately dumping his ass, I said, let's try to work this out, but you have to dump the girlfriend. His response: but what if you and me don't work out? Direct fucking quote. And that was the final straw. Unbelievable. It's you and I. You made the right decision. When his abuse began affecting the way my son viewed abuse. After my ex punched me in the face, my son said, well, it's not like he ever beat the crap out of you. So done. The day after my father died, which happened to be Thanksgiving Day, my husband erased and reset my phone. Everything on it gone. Pictures of my dad with my daughter, pictures that only I had. He did it knowing that I had not backed up my phone and it wasn't connected to the cloud either. I had called him the worst person in the world. He requested a month of leave to visit my terminally ill father, got the leave, then decided to not buy a ticket to come visit. So when I called him that, he decided to show me how much worse it could be. That was the final straw. What kind of person gets called the worst person in the world by someone they're supposed to love, and takes it as a challenge? It was pretty much the Emma Thompson storyline from Love Actually. Peeked into a jewelry bag at what I thought was my Christmas gift. On Christmas morning got a goddamn Nook instead. I was confused until a week later, via Facebook snooping, I saw his friend showing off the gift. Shortly before that, I'd seen suspicious footprints all over our floor and he denied anyone had been in the house. Edit: because people are asking about the footprints, we had light-colored hardwoods and it had been raining a lot, so there were dirty footprints around the front door and pine needles all over the doormat. We only entered and exited through the garage. The worst part, there were children's footprints, too. She brought her kids. Bonus reel: when I was moving out, I found a note from a child thanking him for the Christmas gift, a motherfucking Nook. He bought me the same gift as his side piece's child. After having sex, her lover would wipe his nut on my pillow. Came home from work and laid right in it 2 times. She claimed I drooled in my sleep. I know the taste of semen, she could not fool me. What the fuck am I reading? I came home from work. There was a note on the table. She had dropped our 2 kids off at her grandparents', told them she was going to the mall, and left the country. The length people will take to go to a mall astounds me. Around 6 weeks after we got married, she asked me if it would be alright if she could go out with a guy from her new job, like a date, her exact words. No, WTF. Divorce proceedings began within the week. She moved out, and within 8 months she remarried that guy, had a couple of kids, then divorced him. 8 years later, she finds me, now living in another state, wants to get back together as she said she was wrong, and I was the only guy she ever really loved. No, I was done. Now she is a Jesus freak, and completely FU in the head, Bipolar is my guess. I have had no contact with her in a long time, for my sanity. He came running at me to push me down the stairs, while he was holding our baby. Still to this day, claims it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't made him so mad. I came home early from work because of a migraine. Found him in bed with my best friend. Oddly, I was more hurt by her behavior than his. Broomed them both that day. She made someone else more important than me in our relationship. Despite being told by me, her family, my family and a relationship counselor she thought she was doing the right thing and that I would just hang around while she had her fun. The night I told her it was over, she had plenty of reasons why she was acting the way she was and why she deserved to keep him as a friend. This is nearly 2 years ago now. The other guy lasted a couple of months after we split. She is now trying to justify herself by jumping from bed to bed with whoever she can. I had been in hospital the night before and they had planned to do surgery for suspected appendicitis. It turned out not to be so acute, so the surgery was cancelled and I was discharged and instructed to rest. By that morning, I hadn't eaten for almost 2 days. Husband comes to the hospital to pick me up. He sat in the car about a block away with the engine running waiting for me to walk to where he was. He called his work to say he was taking the day off to look after me. In reality, he spent the day in bed or playing PC games. There was no food in the house and he refused to go grocery shopping because that was my job. By now I'm super hungry and still in pain from the niggling appendix. I asked if he could sort dinner for us. He pretty much picked a fight with me over that. I said I didn't need this in my life and he responded, "Well, we can get a divorce if you want." I said, "Yes please. I've actually been thinking about that for a while." When I did all the chores for us to have a relaxing weekend. I vacuumed the apartment, cleaned everything, did the bathroom, went grocery shopping, $250 plus, washed 2 loads of clothes and hung them to dry, new bed sheets, made dinner that was on the table when she got home. And all during the day I sent her texts telling her what I did. Her reaction when she got home: "Why haven't you done the dishes?" Edit, spelling. My first wife was from Mexico and couldn't really make the transition to the US. She was young and so was I, so I tried everything, including telling her she could stay in Mexico to get her degree and I'd pay for it. Flash forward a couple of years later, we haven't talked in 2 months because of bullshit. I dislocated my shoulder at a fire and am at home after having it reduced, clinical term for fixed. I couldn't shower myself, so my mother has to help me clean up. It finally dawns on me that I'm a grown-ass man getting cleaned by his mother while my wife is oblivious to anything that's going on with me. I was done. I wish I'd done it sooner. She had been telling me to get a girlfriend. She refused sex for months. I put my arm around her one night in bed and she said, "Do not touch me." That was the moment I decided to take her up on her suggestion to find a girlfriend. I eventually did, and then she said, "Good. You can keep the house and I won't ask for a dime in alimony if you cover court costs and sign every paper without complaint." It was the most civil divorce ever, and the entire thing cost me about $300. Many years later, and I still believe that girlfriend was the best decision I ever made in the area of relationships, even though she turned out to be an apeshit crazy raging alcoholic. Solid 10s always are, aren't they? Edit, everyone I've spoken to, including divorced friends and divorce lawyers, confirm that my results are not typical. If you are getting a divorce, hire a competent lawyer to represent you. Pro se divorce almost always ends up being a complete nightmare for one or both parties. We just both wanted out and we didn't have any shared property except the house. FYI to others reading while he's worked out, this could easily have been a huge trap. Get a girlfriend, you do, and then she files for divorce citing your infidelity and laughs all the way to the bank. As a newly engaged person, this was not the thread to read. This is exactly the thread to read. If you see yourself here, don't ignore the signs. When everything I did was being addicted. I'm not that much of a gamer type, but when I found a game I liked on PlayStation, 2 non-adjacent nights of playing a game I enjoyed was addicted to gaming and resulted in a huge outburst how I don't give her enough time anymore. Meanwhile she was so addicted to casual games on her phone that any conversation was more of a monologue where she was just annoyed about interruptions. There were many other similar things. It often revolved around me enjoying something and that becoming a problem. Eventually I just realized she had some kind of an issue with me being happy doing things and we called it. After we parted ways, a friend of mine told me my ex told everyone she ended it on her own as I was interested in everything else but her. Right. My ex was abusive. I was caught in his cycle of I'll stop, only for the abuse to continue. He did things like party all night to isolate me in a state I didn't know anyone. He also slept with a 17-year-old, he was 30. And then tore my rotator cuff in an argument. He spit in my face while I cried. Finally I just snapped, and after 6 weeks of therapy I got my own apartment, packed up my car, and left. Never looked back. Our 4 years were up. I didn't want to pull a Gloria Swanson and divorce after 2 months, so I stuck it out to save face. I did this for 2 decades. When he handed several spreadsheets laying out every time I stopped for a drink at McDonald's, $1, on my way to / from running errands across the city in the desert. He then took my bank ATM card and cut it up. Because I got a drink, wasn't allowed to use or have any cash, it all had to be accounted for at all times. I couldn't handle living under a microscope anymore. So you were married to a /r/personal finance mod then? I have nothing to add to this, but a question to all the people posting. Do you think you married the other person too quickly, or did they just hide really well who they really are? On our wedding night, I complimented his performance in bed. He said he performed well that night so I would stop cheating. Strike 1. Him leaving the hospital when I was in labor with our daughter because I was whiny. It stressed him out. For me to be whiny. Strike 2. Him disappearing from our hotel room when we were out of town. He didn't get back until 4 a.m. Strike 3. We tried counseling, but he refused to stop drinking. He'd also take over every session to tell me how much of a piece of shit I was and remind me how wonderful he was. The counselor would stop him each time, but really, you were whiny during labor? What a fucking dick. The last straw. The one they kept snorting coke with. I took care of him for 3 years, in every way imaginable, financially, sexually, emotionally. The last straw was after I got a tattoo, his Christmas gift to me. He called me a stupid whore bitch and made a motion to hit me in front of our friends, all of his friends, and not the first time he done this, because I tipped the artist $30. All his friends laughed and he got his 5 seconds of fame. 2 months later I moved out. He was incredibly emotionally and verbally abusive to me, always telling me I was never enough and nothing I worked towards would happen. What a loser. We had our problems, but the final straw was probably when she slept with some other guy in Australia, using my money to buy the air tickets. She also tried to make me pay for the divorce. I'd had suspicions for months. She operated a small, unprofitable business from our home which I was bankrolling. Her business partner was around all day and all night, despite my vehement protests that he cheated for at night when I was home from work. Eventually I set up my phone as a recorder whilst I was at work and found the evidence I was looking for after 2 or 3 days, her saying come, let's have sex, and please pretend to be interested this time, after a long and boring argument between the two of them. I immediately turfed her out and we divorced within months, and not too long after she moved in with him. He proceeded to beat her mercilessly and she took him to court. Now he's back at home living with his parents and she's engaged to somebody else. The one thing I did find out after the divorce was that they'd been sleeping together for years before I found out. I'm much happier now than I ever was when she was around. Edit, didn't wish the beating upon her and was just sad to hear about it after. called to tell him my mom had just died and he said, okay, and nothing else. She changed the locks while I was at work. I guess the cheating finally got too much for her. Her cheating, that is. She was a liar, manipulative, nasty, and she went off the pill without telling me. That was so we could have a kid to fix this marriage. Fortunately, she didn't get pregnant, had an affair and kicked me out. I was at home with our newborn and he didn't come home one weekend. He finally came home at about 3 a.m. on Monday and promptly passed out without saying anything. I checked his phone, I know, and there were pictures of his best friend's girlfriend on his phone. He claimed it was okay to spend time with her and get pictures from her because she and her boyfriend were swingers. He doesn't know that it's not how that works. In a moment of rage, I forwarded the pictures to his best friend. I found out they were not swingers when the guy got angry about the pictures and smashed the windshield of his girlfriend's car. I took the kids the next day and moved out. She started using a needle for drugs. Diabetes sucks. I just take pills. 2 Ds in her A. Damn, that's crazy. You'd need pics just to prove it though. Like a link or something just so we can verify she did it for you. We wouldn't want you to have to look yourself. My wife let our best friend put his penis inside of her. Game over. I was with my partner for 6 years. All throughout our relationship, one of her friends, female, constantly bitched about me, saying things like I will never be good enough as I don't earn enough money and have no future ahead of me, our lives will be shit, etc. It was almost constant. I've never really been well off, so money doesn't mean much to me. I find happiness in with things. One day my partner told me that if in the next year I haven't got a better paying job, then she's leaving. I left that day. Fast forward 10 years, I'm traveling to China on a business trip with my beautiful wife, and who's serving at the bar before we board our plane? My ex and her best mate. I tipped them both proudly, exclaiming, "You look like you need this more than us." Sweetest tasting beer I ever had. LPT, never fall in love with another person's lifestyle, possessions and bank account. Fall in love with someone who can be your best friend, lover, and will never let you down. If they have money and power, then that should just be a bonus. The one that reached across the room and drank my milkshake. She drank it up. Oh. And the whole infidelity thing. That wasn't cool either. She flew to Texas to spend spring break with a man she met on World of Warcraft. Him being cruel to my son, not his son, my son from a previous marriage. That's something you can't accept. She cheated. I tried to make it work. She blew up at me one night 6 months later, threatening divorce because I was being friendly with a waitress at a bar. She was with me at the time, wasn't being secretive or flirting. I took her up on the threat, told her I was done. Drove down to the bar after we got home, got the waitress's number, went to see my lawyer the next day, got papers filed, fucked the waitress, and we ended up in love and are happily married now, and far more happily married than I ever was before. Big shout out to my ex-wife for pushing me towards this wonderful woman. He wouldn't get a job. He would make a big show of looking for work, fill out applications, then stuff them in the car and never turn them in. Finding them in the car was the last straw. When I returned from Afghanistan in 2012, I was not the same man I was when I had gone. I was completely broken, disillusioned, angry, and entitled. Completely selfish. The only thing I could focus on was myself. Society told me that was okay. I became abusive, verbally and emotionally. I twisted everything she said and made it her fault. I took every flaw of mine and applied it to her. I became, in a literal sense, sociopathic. The war had affected me so deeply that I had lost myself to it. So when she took the kids and left nothing but a note on the table, I started to take the hint and made the changes I needed to make. It was too late for our marriage though. She is a good woman and is happily dating. I myself met an ex-Marine woman and are at the courting stage. The kids are happy and I see them 3-4x a week. And I am starting to get the man I was back. Divorce is tragic but not always bad. There was no final straw, we just slowly and painfully realized we were not with the right person. I found out she was wrapping her mouth around his straw. When he told me he was going out to the pub for a couple of pints with his cousin and I didn't hear from him for 3 days whilst he went on a massive bender and spent $5,000 at the casino. This wasn't the first, second or third time he had done this. By the 6th time I was out. When he held me down, put a kitchen knife against my throat, and told me that if I ever left him, he would kill me. Then explained in graphic detail how he would get away with it. This involved exsanguination, dismemberment, and lie. Also, he was a criminal prosecutor for our rural area, so he was tight with the cops and judges. Also, he had so thoroughly isolated me from friends, family, and the outside world that no one would even know I was missing. That was when I decided that I had to get out. It was a couple of months before I saw my opportunity to get out safely. I suspected my then husband of cheating, so I followed him. I went to the house where he was and saw him outside with a little boy. I was angry and asked, not meaning it, "Who is that, your son?" He said, "Yes." Yikes, surprise, he had another family. Time to split. My response, "I don't ever want to see you again. On your deathbed will be too soon." When I found an abortion follow-up appointment letter. We hadn't had sex in over a year. Going through a divorce now. I don't think there was really one thing. We moved to another country and I think she kind of found herself. I was really into settling. We were just two ships drifting past each other at a really slow pace. She still lives here and I help her. We left on good terms, thankfully. We both found it was best for us to be on our own and move on. Came home from my second deployment and for the second time, she wasn't there. Liked what you saw? Hit like, subscribe and the bell icon for more crazy Reddit content.